Hey, I'm Morgan, and this is the PS We Expire podcast.
One day I was sitting on the porch with my mom while I was caretaking for her. She's in the midst of Alzheimer's, and it was when my kids were young. They were 3 and 7 at the time, I think, and we're sitting on the front porch. It's a beautiful day outside, and we're watching my kids play. And this is amidst, we're having a calm moment, but this is amidst so much turmoil. It was hard. It was very, very difficult caretaking for her. But we're having a nice moment, and I'm sitting there watching my kids play, and it occurred to me that what if someday my kids have to experience the nightmare of what I'm currently experiencing with my mom, except with me? And it was everything shifted in that moment. And this was 5+ years ago, when I think people like Peter Attia maybe were talking a little bit about brain. I think there's Dr. Amon, but it wasn't as buzzy, I guess, now as it is now. And but luckily there's still clearly a ton of research, and I just dived into every ounce of research I could and changed all of learned so much about blood sugar, learned so much about muscle health, learned everything I could about what that had to do with brain health, changed all of my habits. And it took about the course of a year to learn and consistently implement the habits. And when I did, I felt better than I ever had in my life, even though I was, I was pretty fit before. I felt like I was healthy, but I never felt like I had a great relationship with food. I treated fitness as a way to change my body. It was all the kind of classic diet culture crap. And with this other focus around brain health, I let go of the noise around what my body needs to be, what kind of food, how much food I should be eating, what size I need to be, yada yada. And it came down to explicitly about how do I help my body thrive and function for my brain, right? How do I thrive? How do I make function the biggest priority? And it was when I shifted my goal, my framework, it was everything. There were so many lessons I came to on my own that I've since read about from behavior change books and stuff, but I came to organically on my own. Everything I feel about how self-loving is incorporated into behavior change, and how important it is to have a deep why beyond an aesthetic goal, and all these things I came to organically. And so it felt I had such a huge impactful change, not just on my body like that. And I really felt for the first time in my life, and I can say this honestly, for the first time in my life, like that was legitimately secondary when I'd, always kind of had body-ish my whole life. And to have that, to have broken down all of that baggage around diet culture and really touched on something so deeply meaningful, it changed, not just my body, but my relationship to myself, my relationship to food, and it was so impactful. So when that happened, I was like, something's here, something really big is here. And it took me a long time, years of caretaking for my mom. So I was a little busy, but marinating about like, how do I share this? How do I talk about this? How do I share? And I started creating content specifically around just fitness, because I'm like, no one cares about brain health. In my mind, I'm like, how do I have to sell brain health, right? Like no one cares. No one wants to hear about Alzheimer's prevention. So when I started making content, it was just around fitness, and I'm like, this feels gross. I don't like this. And I was like, forget it. I'm only going to talk about brain health. And when I had 42 followers at the time, and when I said, forget it, I'm just going to talk about what matters and what is meaningful. And that's when I started getting a lot of attention online, which was really, it was so like wonderfully validating. I'm like, I knew I was onto something. I'm onto something.
One of the things that we know about behavior change is that often people won't change behavior until like it's too painful to keep doing things the way they've been doing it, or there's like some type of like inciting event that may not seem big on the outside, but somehow feels like deeply meaningful. And there's like an internal shift towards that. And then things start to change. And you said that that after that front porch moment, you started to really like dig into the research, and then found that your feelings about food change, your feelings about fitness change. And I was really curious if if you had the big event and then that is what spurred the educational deep dive, and that over time that changed, or was it like a in the moment, like bright spotlight, like everything changed in that moment? Because I think it's really important for people to hear like the distinction between the big event, the changing event, and then also like how long it takes still to change our mindset about stuff.
Exactly. So yes, it was definitely not like this. I mean, it felt that moment was big because it was the spark, right? It was the spark that just propelled everything. And so it was once I started learning one thing about blood sugar, I'm like, okay, well, what is that? No, I think I started learning about muscle and how muscle affects your
Mm,
blood sugar and how what blood sugar has to do with your brain. And it was just the more I dived down, the more I learned and the more fascinating. So it was the spark, but it was a long time of just grasping the physiology around it. I'm like, okay, well, blood sugar has something to do with your brain, and I've heard the terms glucose and insulin, and it was like, no, I never could like get it straight. I'm like, the glucose bone is attached to the hip bone. Like, I never like could never get it straight, and just even understanding that and understanding what that has to do with your brain, and then understanding what that has to do with muscle, and then it was just layers and layers and layers of understanding, but learning it, really learning to the point where I could teach it, right?
mm.
That's the like, that's what I've been doing this past year is now I'm teaching this. And so that's another level of deepening my own understanding is relaying it. That's a whole other thing. I'm like, oh wow, I'm really, really getting this now. But it's a long time. It takes a long time to just understand it and then implement it. So yes, it was not this like did this and now I'm this perfect person. It was and also what I teach is building habits slowly, which again I didn't really grasp until I did
Mm.
this organically on my own. I'm like, okay, now I eat 100 grams of protein every day. Brr, 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 brr. Like, no, I didn't start out perfect. I built it slowly. And I think
Well,
it's
let's talk a little bit about behavior change and the small tweaks that we make to have it end up like compound interest. But first, can we just like in laywomen's terms, like talk about blood sugar, muscle, glucose, the brain, insulin resistance, like all of these terms that like keep this information kind of locked up in medical and like academia, and like actually disseminate it a little bit so that we can be like, oh, like you said,
Mhm.
like what does this actually mean? So can let's talk a little bit about how the body responds to insulin, what insulin does in the body, what glucose does in the body, and how our muscles are an important part of that.
I'm so glad you got asked because I think it's so a huge portion. I mean, a huge portion of what I teach is the why behind what's happening. Because I think when you have a deep understanding of the of the mechanics of going on, you have a respect more. It's not just following a rule. So all that is to say is, let's start with insulin resistance. So I think a common theme is a term that's thrown out as Alzheimer's is diabetes type 3, right? So I'm like, okay, there's definitely something about blood sugar there. I'm like, what does that mean? What is diabetes? Like, I barely understand what diabetes type 2 is. So it's insulin resistance. This happens in our bodies and brains that with chronic glucose being high. So glucose comes from the sugar and the carbohydrates that we eat, right? It's the sugar in our blood. We eat a sandwich, the sugar is absorbed in our blood as glucose, right? The insulin comes in to manage that glucose. Glucose is actually toxic in our bloodstream. So the insulin needs to come in and manage it. Great. We eat a sandwich, glucose goes high, insulin comes in and manage it. Bada bing, bada boom, we're good, right? The problem is my favorite analogy is imagine glucose is a Girl Scout. And Girl Scout season is on, and Girl Scout comes and knocks on your door, and you're like, heck yeah, I haven't had cookies in a minute. I'm going to open that door, right? Great. You open the door, or I forget who is what. I think the Girl Scout is, yes, the Girl Scout is insulin. The cookies are glucose. Okay. So the Girl Scout knocks, you let the Girl Scout in. Great. The problem was that when the Girl Scout is knocked 400 times in one day, and you're like,
Mm,
I'm good. I'm good. You are more resistant to opening that door. You're good
mm,
on the cookies. And that is what the cells have. The Girl Scout has been knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking, and the cells are resistant. They don't want to open their doors anymore. They are less, they can hear the insulin less. So then now we have to pump out more insulin to make the knock louder. And this increases inflammation, and this is a hugely problematic situation in our bodies. But what happens to the neurons, this happens to the neurons in our brains as well. And so when our cells are resistant to opening the doors to let the energy in, the glucose in, after a while, we are getting inefficient glucose uptake in the brain, i.e., inefficient fuel in the brain. And after decades of this, it's like slow energy crisis in the brain, which is why there's the phrase of Alzheimer's is a disease of midlife, because this doesn't start at 70. This starts at 40s, 50s. So it's hugely there's a there's a two-pronged approach. And one prong of that is to limit the glucose, right? We have less demand on insulin. Our insulin, because our cells become more sensitive to insulin, right? So we have to kind of get our glucose intake under control, right? That's one. I like to think of it as a factory. So glucose coming down the conveyor belt, we have to limit that. And the other part of the factory is our equipment. What can handle the glucose, and that is our muscle. Our muscle is a basically glucose sponge. It can soak up so much and use up so much of the glucose so that insulin doesn't have to work so hard to manage it. So we need to manage the amount of glucose and increase the capacity of our factory, our equipment, our muscle. And so this is why, I mean, exercise is hugely important for lots of other reasons, but the developing and not just growing our muscle big, it's not about necessarily big muscle, it's about the health of our muscle, right? Or a lot of us have intramuscular fat, which means our muscle is a ribeye versus a fillet, and that muscle cannot work as well. It is inefficient at handling the glucose. So now we have a ton of glucose and not very good equipment. And this is hugely problematic, not just for our bodies, but also for our brains. I mean, one of the major factors of that leads to Alzheimer's. I'm not going to say it's like the only factor, but it is a major factor.
If you followed my work for any amount of time, you know how much I love mindfulness-based tools that are backed by science. I've created a lot of things over the years. I've never really had a place to house them all in a way that is easily accessible. Well, I created a resource vault a few weeks ago, and I wanted to give you access to all the things that I've created. So in this resource vault, there's guided meditations, a meditation course, a habit tracker, a list of 55 books that will change how you think, journal prompts, guide to know yourself more. Including in this vault are things about entrepreneurship, like how to create a podcast, about how to start a business. All of these things are in my resource vault, and they are free. If you go to morganmatzinger.com/vault, you will get access. Okay, back to the show. I love this metaphor of the Girl Scout cookies. I think that's like anything that we can visualize and be like, oh, I see how this works is so helpful. The other thing is like the timing of our ingestion of glucose. So if we're doing it all day long, the factory never gets to take a break. Like nobody gets to go home and go to sleep. So some of it is like the timing, which is, I don't really want to jump into like the intermittent fasting kind of realm of things, but I do think this idea of like, when do you give your factory a break from having to process the glucose is really helpful. But also, what does our body do with the excess Girl Scout cookies? And one of the things that it does with the excess Girl Scout cookies is it stores it in the liver, and it stores it in fat around our organs. So that's another like place where we see inflammation and like where it bogs down the machinery. Some of it, like you said, is in when we have the ribeye steak instead of the lean steak. That doesn't allow the muscle to work as well. But we're also then impairing liver function and also creating more visceral fat, which is not, I think this is a really helpful thing for people to understand when we're talking about this, not as like an aesthetic thing, like how do I make my body look a certain way? Because the two different types of fat storage is the fat that is close to the surface, and then the fat that's actually around our organs. And the fat that's around our organs is much more dangerous than the fat that like you can see on the outside of your body. So you could technically have someone who looks very fit, but they have a lot of visceral fat around their organs, which is really problematic. So I just wanted to throw that out there too. But can you talk a little bit more about um, like the inflammation and the impact on our mental function when we have the imbalance of the Girl Scouts showing up with the cookies all the time?
Right. So I think I mean, it's hard to say this because brain fog is a symptom of so much. It is also a symptom of insulin resistance. You're getting inefficient fuel in the brain. And that's why there's a lot of discussion around HRT and estrogen, because as estrogen declines midlife for women, it makes our neurons less insulin sensitive. There's a more of an energy crisis. But I think there needs to be more of a conversation around metabolic flexibility as well. So we have a backup fuel source. I don't want to get like too technical and too bogged down into the physiology of this, because I can get a lot. But there we have a backup source of ketones, right? And which we make when we are in a metabolic state of ketosis, and our brains are not, they are, the part of our brain, our hippocampus is not in state. I'm sorry, let me use my words. The ketones are not insulin dependent. So ketones, let's see, if insulin is a bouncer at the door, ketones are a celebrity at the club.
Hmm.
They can just walk right in, right? They don't need. So a lot of times this happens when people get into a metabolic state of ketosis. They get a lot of mental clarity. There's a huge uptake of energy in the brain. And so it's just hugely important to take brain fog very, very seriously I mean, it's hard because it's also mixed up with so much in life, right? It's just also stress, and it's also just existing in our 40s and 50s. Um, but I think paying attention to brain fog is a huge symptom of insulin resistance and needs to be taken seriously.
How how does someone, like, if someone's like ketones, like, and maybe they've heard of like the ketogenic diet, but maybe we could talk about uh how glucose and like what we're learning about glucose and a ketogenic diet, like what's the overlap there?
So our body has two sources of fuel: glucose, generally from carbohydrates and sugar that we eat, and ketones. So if we deprive our body of glucose, which means our insulin and glucose have a positive relationship. If glucose goes down, insulin goes down. And when insulin goes down, we are able to access our stored fat as fuel. Our excess fat is turned into ketones, and we get to use that as our energy source. And so, but we can't, if insulin is chronically high,
Mm,
that turns off that other storage. So if we are chronically high glucose, chronically high insulin, we are never able to tap into that excess stored fat. So I was watching Modern Family with my kids the other day, and one of the characters, they were like doing a juice cleanse. And, this show's now like 20 years old or something, right? And so I'm like, juice cleanse. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, juice cleanse is horrible. You're
mm,
keeping your glucose chronically high. So you mean your blood sugar is swinging all over the place, and you're keeping your insulin chronically high. You're never
mm,
able to access stored fat. Once your body is able to switch to that stored fat, this is why people who fast after a certain amount of time, they say they're not even hungry after a certain amount, because their body actually is using the stored fat. But it's because we have gotten so far away from that with so much chronically high glucose and therefore chronically high insulin, our body forgets how to access that. And that's why fasting can be a really, really powerful tool, but that's a whole other thing. But so that we teach our body how to be more flexible, i.e. metabolically flexible, to access stored fat.
I think one of the important components to behavior change, and also to like even something like how does this impact if we're trying to switch to something that is either keto like or keto consistent, is that you feel pretty terrible as you're adjusting to this new way of doing things. And I think that's really important when we're talking about behavior change too, that like sometimes you might actually just feel like shit for a little while
Mhm.
when you're doing the new thing.
Mhm.
And many times, like I mean, I see this in myself and I see this in behavior research, is we give up when we start to feel really terrible because we're like, well, it's not working or we're not seeing the results that we want. So we stop doing it. Or maybe I feel really terrible. Like if someone's trying to get on a better sleep schedule by setting like a consistent go to sleep and wake up time, and it for a little while before your circadian rhythm gets online and acclimated, like you feel awful.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can talk now, we can shift into behavior change and like how we actually start to establish lifestyle habits that aren't dependent on like, oh, swimsuit season's coming up and so I better lose weight for the summer, or I'm going to lose weight for this trip I'm going to take, or whatever. Like how do we start to think differently about our life and our lifestyle? How do we do this? How do we start to make lifelong change?
That's an excellent question. I love this question because I've been thinking about this so much recently around I was thinking about this and kind of arguing with myself around the not having the destination. The goal weight is actually a problem. I'm like, well, maybe it's useful to just get you started, right? Maybe like, okay, it would be nice to enjoy how I look. It would be nice to not feel like, ugh, if I look in the mirror. Like that is, that's a legitimate feeling, and I understand that. And that's not just superficial. Maybe that's necessary to get change started, but I think it's really, really important to access a bigger, long lasting, more meaningful why behind it, because you have to remove the destination. You have to remove, like, I was thinking about this. I was like, if you have a destination, you're going and you're going and you're going and you're going, and then you get there. And what happens when you get there? You stop. This is the problem with the destination. This is a problem with yo-yo diet. I think this is why yo-yo dieting is a thing. You do something that's a little too harsh and a little too extreme, and you can tough it
Mm,
out for a 30-day challenge or whatever it is. And then you get there and then you stop. And so I think it's really, really important to develop a practice. I was trying to figure out how to talk about this online without being super weird, of, of just a little bit of suck,
hmm.
a manageable amount of suck. Like, and I'm like, just sit in the suck. I'm like trying to think. I'm like, this is not going to go well on the internet. Like,
It might go too well. I don't
I don't know.
know. Get a whole nother demographic on your page.
I think it's really important to not be like, all right, tomorrow I'm doing this. Is when I do that voice, just know that it's not anyone else except my former self. Like, not mocking anyone except me. Tomorrow I'm going to turn my life around. Tomorrow's the day that I'm going to, I'm going to get it together. I'm going to go to
I'm
the boot
pretty
camp class.
I'm
I'm going to
pretty
eat
sure she's friends with the one that's in my head too.
Yeah, they're probably definitely friends. Tomorrow's the day that we're gonna do it.
This Monday, the first of the month.
Yeah. And because it is, there's this like excitement, like, oh, I'm gonna do the
Mm,
thing. But I think what has taken me so long, 40 some odd years to learn, is that it's not the like tomorrow's the day. It's that tomorrow, or like, you know what? It's not tomorrow. Right now, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do 10 counter
mm,
push-ups. And then I'm going to connect to how that felt. That felt good. I got a little yummy nugget of, okay, that felt good. And that was a manageable amount of suck. I'm not saying change doesn't suck. I'm just saying you don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer to change. And it took me so long to learn that. I used to do Bikram yoga every day. And, it was awful. It was awful thinking like, I'm going to get there. And, 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 and the crazy thing is that I achieved my aesthetic goal by being gentle and by connecting to how I felt and by connecting to what fuels me well, and not by like some external rule of what number of calories or whatever macros or whatever. And slowly, gently pushing myself, not berating myself, not saying you better go to this 5 a.m. boot camp class, by making a workout that I didn't hate. Is it mildly uncomfortable and annoying? Sure. But it only sucks a little bit. I can handle a little bit of suck. And I think that's a really, really, so having the lack of maybe like the boosty of a destination, like I would like to eventually look like this, whatever. Sure. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I just think you also need a deep meaningful why. And I think it's really, really important to develop the practice that it takes to not just get there, but to just keep going, because it's a forever practice. And annoyingly, like, yay, I've achieved my aesthetic goal and I still have to do it. Like, I think maybe it's easy to think like, oh, once I get there, like my problems are solved. Like, no,
Mhm.
once you quote unquote get there, you still have to do it. I still have to work out. It's still mildly annoying. Like, but I developed the practice of staying in the of continuing to move, because I didn't do it in an extreme way. That's
I love that. Okay, so I have a question about your deep, meaningful why. Um, you said that you wanted to make sure that you did everything that you could to keep your children from having the same experience that you had with your mother. And I'm curious if like the Alzheimer's prevention was enough of a why, or if along the way there was something even deeper that cemented this for you.
I think that I think it was a little bit of both. That that why had layers. That was the top layer, right? And it was the more I realized, I was like, well, sh- if anything, if I end up getting Alzheimer's or whatever, my kids are going to know that I did everything I could. My kids are going to know that I tried. My kids are going to know that I took this seriously. My kids are going to know that I showed up for myself and there for them. Like, I'm teaching them how that it's not selfish to put work to take care of myself. And I so it just my why got deeper. It was initially like, oh, I don't want my kids to go through this, right?
Mm.
But as I lived it, as I embodied it, there was just so much more beyond that. And that and this and it's not just my kids. It's so for childless people too. It's not just it's for anyone in your life that loves you. You have an obligation to give them the gift of you.
Mm.
And you do that by taking care of yourself. And it's just like it just got so big for your friends. Just in friendship, like, and it's just yeah, it's so big. If that answers
I
your question.
Yeah, it does. I in my own experience, the big catalyst for me was same kind of thing. Like I wanted to be healthy to be able to take care of my disabled child.
Well,
And physically, what that meant was needing to be able to safely lift, 85, 90 pounds, and to transfer her from her chair to the car, like these
yeah.
very practical things that I needed to be able to do with this little human that I was in charge of. And as I started to take care of myself, like it was kind of amazing how it unlocked
Mm.
this deeper realization of not just being healthy to be there for my children but to be healthy to be there for myself. And like
Oh,
who was I when I was able to address some of these like physical and mental downstream effects of some of the lifestyle choices that I was making. Who would I be without the brain fog caused by always, just eating stuff that wasn't necessarily like the most healthy, or having it out of balance, I guess is probably a better way to put it, because I don't think that telling people you need to stick to like a really strict ketogenic diet in order to not like have any of these problems is actually true or helpful. I think that having a good relationship with food and with our food choices and with our movement choices is really really important to being able to stick to something long term and to be able to make changes that aren't um just about following the rules, but about paying attention to how our bodies feel in response to the choices
Mhm.
that we're making. But I was really surprised by all of the things that it kind of unlocked in me of
Mm.
like who could I be if I was making choices to like really take care of myself, not just in food and movement, but also when I stick up for myself in relationships or when I say no to stuff that is actually like really draining to me or and then it was like all these like society expectations of like what it's to be as a woman, you know, and it was like,
Right.
oh my god, like all of a sudden I was
Mm.
positively drowning in what it meant to like really adjust and adapt to what self-love meant, not just on this like surface level like take care of yourself and love yourself,
Mhm.
but it was like really like on a deep level all these parts of myself and like little Morgan and you know that I mean that took me down the road into like internal family systems and like all of this
Yes.
stuff, you know, which we totally don't have to go to in this, but it was like holy smokes, like what does it actually mean to love myself beneath even all like the choices that I make and beneath what my body looks like, what me, Morgan, at the core, who is that? And that it has been like a really beautiful way to like reverse the motivation to like who is this person that wants to be expressed and paid attention to and loved, and then what does that look like in the way that I live my life in all of these areas. It's
Mhm.
like it's such a it's such an important shift away from like the diet culture and
Ye-
exercise culture that is
Yes.
just so full of like so much grossness.
Yes. I love that you brought that because it was like the taking care of yourself opened the door to all everything. And it's like you show up for yourself physically and then you realize how good that
Mm,
feels and that when you feel good, what else that translates into for the rest of your life and how and then now you're setting better boundaries and you know and it's like and it does it is exactly what you just said, but the doorway was showing up for yourself in this in like kind of health forward, not aesthetic goal forward. And then what that opened up, it's I love everything that you just said because that is
mm.
exactly it. It is so much bigger. And it all starts with the embodying and the taking action at this it's not it's bigger than surface level, but it is like this the health as the doorway.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask, okay, so there are people who are in this position of like Monday. I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to start on Monday for years. And I will actually put myself in that camp. Just to be like super honest, for a couple of years, I had like a very good nutrition and movement, like routine and lifestyle. And then my daughter passed away.
Oh.
And I gained a bunch of weight. And, you know, like, and here I am comparing myself now to the Morgan that was like super fit for a couple of years. And
Mm.
it has kept me from, well, there's a couple of reasons why I'm sharing this. Like, one is because um, even though everything that I learned about self love and incorporating things into my lifestyle that are healthy for me, like I still struggle with this stuff. Like this isn't like a one and done, like now I've learned that lesson and I'm good now for the rest of my life. So I want to encourage people that are listening that this is like a lifelong learning, and these choices depending on what's happening in our lives are going to be cyclical, and that there are times in our lives when we're not able to show up in the same way that we were before, but that number one like doesn't diminish our worth, and
Mm.
that it also just means that we might need to adapt to like a
Oh.
different way of doing things. So there's that where I'm talking to myself and the person who's like, my life this happened and now my body is doing this and it feels like a stranger, or it feels like sometimes it feels like an enemy, or it feels like I don't know it anymore.
Oh.
And then I want to talk about, I guess in the same vein as like how do we start again, like what is the mindset needed in order to begin again. And maybe
Mm.
I just answered my own question, like
No,
to always like have a starter mindset.
I think this is such an appropriate, wonderful question because I have been struggling with I feel like I was really, really, really on it. And then I have been struggling with some of my own mental health ish lately in the past couple months. And so speaking to the cyclical nature of, and almost like, it's almost, you've set the standard for yourself, right? And now you can't, you
Mm-hmm.
like when you were working out every day or whatever, like, and then life happened, something tragic happened, and then you've fallen off. And what does this mean? And how you continue showing up for yourself. And I love that you asked this, because I've been struggling with the say. I feel like I've recently have not been as good as my former self. Not, good. Um,
Mm.
and I think the most important thing, I think this is where self-trust comes into play, right? Is that knowing that you can, and also trusting that you will get back there in time. And it's like compassion and self-trust and grace. And while a gentle, anything that you do, giving yourself any gentle push toward anything, a walk, like today I managed to, I hadn't done push-ups in like a month, or today I managed to do,
Mm.
10 push-ups, and I felt better about that. Or just, so it's giving yourself compassion and trusting that you can come back because you did before. And right, but right now this is not the season for it. And trust, while simultaneously trying on, gently pushing, gently pushing. I think that's, and by try, because I say trying on, because I have days where I'm just, nope. Like I, just
Mm.
no. So, but to not, to not, to allow yourself to, I guess not, Hmm. If the like habits that you want are a physical object, right? Instead of just dropping it on the floor, just allow yourself to just hold it. If that makes any sense,
Mm.
rather than
Mm-hmm.
like being active with it, you can just hold it. Trust that you can just hold it and have it sit there, and kind of like just sit there for the time being, and maybe gently like pick it up when you can. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I appreciate so much, Rachel, that you're sharing that, like, even you like have times when this just it's
It's not.
not working,
Hmm.
and that's, I think that's one of the things that all of us know about social media is, like, we all know intellectually that people show us what they want us to see, and that there's a lot of pressure, especially for people who are in, like a very visible, um for lack of a better word, industry. So people that are like in the fitness industry, for example, like have to show up with their bodies looking a certain way, and like always presenting like what consistency looks like, and motivation and discipline and all this. And like, we, even though we intellectually know that that's not the full story, that's still the story we tell ourselves, is like,
Hmm.
I suck, I'm a failure, like, I
Hmm.
if I just had as much discipline as so and so, like, I wouldn't be not doing push-ups for a month, like that, which is
Hmm.
not true. And so it's so, I appreciate so much that you're sharing how, your mental health impacts your ability to show up to the things that even you consistently do, or that you're quote unquote known for, or that your business depends on, or whatever. Like, it's so important to do that, because otherwise, I think that's one of the reasons why it's hard for us to get back into things, or it's hard for us to start, because we think, if I'm not going to do it as consistently as so and so, there's no point in doing it. So I
Yes.
just I appreciate you sharing that so much.
Absolutely. And I think I was like, as you're saying this, I was like, I maybe because I haven't I haven't been showing up online. Like
Mm,
it's been hard because I feel like a fraud right now. I feel like a fraud trying
mm,
to be like, do your push-ups. Like and I'm having a hard time even showing up online. And maybe this should be talked about more, because that even people who seem, I mean, like, I try to think, I'm like, oh my God, some people probably look at me like she's got it.
mm,
I'm like, oh my God, they don't even know. Like she doesn't right
mm.
now. And I think it's important to have that flip side, especially online, because it's so easy to just uh keep on there and see, like, you feel like you can't keep up.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. One of the things that I bang about online a lot is like having a good meditation practice. And I haven't been meditating for like 2 months. So, okay, I'll just like admit that here. I've really
God.
fallen off the meditation wagon. But anyway,
I really like you. I like you so much.
I well, going back to again like this idea of beginning again. And maybe that's a great way for us to start talking about some of the things that you share online that we can do. Like because this is how I think about uh exercise, for example, is like if I'm not keeping to a 3 to 4 day a week and
Mm.
30 to 40 minutes at the gym and XYZ exercises, then it's not even worth me doing anything. So
Mm.
I want to just I want to dispel that myth so that everyone listening to this isn't like, oh god, like I'm gonna need to adopt this like really strict routine or whatever. So because I know that one of the things that people have really resonated with you online is squats and push-ups. So
Mm.
like let's go back to the conversation about glucose and brain health and insulin, and just talk about building up these particular muscle groups, and how we can do that in a completely not 4 to 5 day a week in the gym like way.
Yes, I love because I think that the black and white thinking of like, okay, I better be it on my schedule or it's just, you know what, forget it. And I think I think these just to help people remember, just to remind people that it's fitness can be all the time and it can be done in
Mm,
these little ways, these little ways that aren't time consuming. Like you don't have to wear stretchy pants. You can take an extra flight of stairs. You can bust out 30 squats. I mean, I went to a co-working space yesterday and they have a big, nice, single bathroom. And I took my headphones in there and like danced my face off so
mm-hmm,
hard and like was like panting. It was like I was going off, going off. And like these little ways that we can incorporate movement and especially in that kind of realm of like dancing by yourself in the bathroom at the co-working space
mm,
that also incorporates play and incorporates a sense of like release and incorporates that we can remember that movement doesn't have to be suffering and or
mm,
horrible. This is not burpees, like that we can do push-ups in a way that doesn't make you feel weak and horrible for not being able to do floor, army push-ups, that we can do some squats that use up huge leg muscles to help regulate some glucose, and
mm.
so I think it's really important to not have this black and white and to just help people remember that it's fitness can be all the time, man.
I loved that in some of your content too. You talk about how helpful it is to do these things right after eating.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, because I think all of us should be like this, we should all be a little bit skeptical and be like, I don't know about like, let's look into that. Cause I was like, how just knowing how, like the hormones and the neurotransmitters signal the body to release certain chemicals to do certain things. I was like, how I couldn't really put together how immediate exercise after eating something made a difference in the insulin send out.
Uh-huh.
So, which I mean, you're bang on. You're like spot on. This is backed up by science. So I think it's really helpful for people who are, well, number one, like if you're skeptical, good, like go figure it
Yeah.
out like go investigate. Like please don't listen to everything that people say online and be
Yes.
like, okay, that's how it is. Like go investigate yourself. But um so I did that and I was like, well, this is really cool. So could you talk a little bit about, because if I'm saying I don't need to do it like 5 days a week, but if I want to incorporate these little movements into my day every day, like what's a good time to do that? And why does movement right after eating? Tell me more about that.
Absolutely. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So glucose, we eat it gets in our bloodstream, right? Now we have all this energy in our blood. What's cool about muscle is that it uses the glucose, right? So if we move about 30 minutes after eating, after the glucose has had a minute to be absorbed into our bloodstream, so now we have all this glucose running around, right? Instead of insulin coming in to manage it all, now we have, if we and by movement I mean contract your muscles, I mean literally walking 10 minutes, doing 30 squats. I started the 30 squats because I was like, what's faster than walking? I was like, what's faster? Not everyone like 10,000 steps. Yes, 10,000 steps. But like not everyone has time for this, right? I was like, some big old muscles, bust out 30 squats. Um, or like literally just any movement, um, you contract your muscle, that muscle contraction uses the glucose. If the glucose is now being used up, soaked up by the muscle, we need less insulin to manage it, right? There is now, because now there's less glucose because it has been gone to the, it's now being used by the muscle. So we can have something like a 30% decrease in our blood sugar response to eating with something as simple as a 10-minute walk at about 30 minutes after eating. It's hugely impactful, hugely.
I love it.
And so I am a big fan and encourage people to eat a a big ass breakfast full of fiber and protein. And so my breakfast is huge, like 500-600 calories probably. And I, but definitely 30 grams of protein and lots of fiber, but it's a lot of food. And I think it's really, after I eat a big old breakfast, I make sure to move my body. That's why I usually like working out within about 30 minutes to an hour after I eat, to
Mm.
use up to help my body manage the glucose. So I don't have to use so much insulin to manage it. I help make myself more insulin sensitive because I use less insulin, because the muscles are using up the
Mm.
glucose.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe we could talk for just a second about people who are like, what do we mean about foods that have glucose in them? So, why in one of the categories, like why protein works differently than carbohydrates, what in the important role of fiber in with carbohydrates,
Hmm.
like how, like when we're talking about like net carbs. I guess we don't have to like totally go down the rabbit hole on
Like,
that,
oh
but
God.
it would be really interesting for people to know the difference between like what happens when I eat like a peanut butter jelly sandwich versus what happens when I eat the chicken breast or something.
Hmm.
Maybe something more palatable than just a dry chicken breast, but like chicken and maybe some like blackberries and
Hmm.
some greens. Like,
Yeah.
what are we looking at difference wise?
Protein is super powerful because it slows your gastric processing. It's super powerful for lots of reasons, but it's harder for your body to process protein, right? With things like carbohydrates, like bread, pasta, candy, whatever, your body, it has so much more glucose, and your body absorbs that very quickly and processes it very quickly. Protein has a really high thermic effect of food. It takes your body, I think it's like, you use 30% of the calories from protein just to process it. Plus it gives you the amino acids. It does not dump a whole bunch of glucose in your bloodstream to process. And fiber also slows your gastric processing. This is hugely important. Plus fiber includes a lot of micro and macronutrients that we need.
Mm,
Glucose, for the most part, is not so, I mean, dependent, like, unless it's from vegetables, right? It's generally not as nutrient dense. It's energy rich. It's energy rich, and that's great if we're using the energy. The
mm,
problem is most of us are not using the influx of energy that we are giving our bodies, and we need energy. I mean, I'm not anti-carb. I'm not anti-carb. Our bodies need it, but I'm a huge fan on giving your body what it needs, fiber and protein, and then with whatever's left over, sure, have some carbs. Like whatever was literally left over on your plate after you've given your body what you need.
mm,
It's just really, and the order in which you eat is also super important. So your body is really reactive and sensitive to when your stomach is empty. So if you wake up in the morning and have a piece of bread, that bread is going to be absorbed very, very quickly because you're reactive and sensitive to that. And so it's much better to start the morning with some eggs. Have 3 or 4 eggs, and then have a piece of toast, and that you will have a much different glycemic response from that versus a toast and then some eggs.
I love this. I when I was learning even just a little bit about uh like chemistry and how these molecules are broken apart and broken down and used by the body, like even that, you have enzymes in your saliva that start to break down carbohydrates in your mouth, and then like at different parts in your digestive system the body releases different enzymes to break down macromolecules into micromolecules to be used by the body. And so like even understanding some of these processes, like why does protein, what does that mean? Like why do we want more protein versus carbohydrates? And so being able to, this is what I find so helpful about neuroscience, about biology, is like once you kind of know the mechanisms behind how your body works, not only do you then have like so much awe for all the processes that happen outside of our conscious awareness. And it, like, for me, it was one of the things that made my like self-love kind of go through the roof, because I was like, oh my God, like there's so many things happening in here without me having to control it at all. And I just was like so enamored with like the systems, all the tiny systems, and like almost like these little machinery in our body that do all these things without us having to tell them to do any of it. And so it made me like very appreciative of all the things that happen in my body. But it also made me much more aware of like the, we have these like moral imperatives attached to food. Like,
Mm.
I was bad today, I had bad carbohydrates. And it's like, no, like you can remove all of that kind of like shame based like nonsense to that, because you understand like the mechanisms about how our body processes it. And so like of course we would we would crave carbohydrates. Like that makes so much sense that our bodies would be like, yes, fast fuel. It's like
Mhm.
so easy to break down because our brains and our bodies love the path of least resistance, right?
Mhm.
And so if I can at least like partner with how my body naturally works and recognize that like a craving for carbs doesn't mean that I'm somehow like a bad person or that
Mhm.
carbs are bad. It just is like anytime you can peel off the shame layer, it's like, like I just now get to partner with
It's
what works
I
best for my
love
body.
so
It's
much I
wonderful.
love so much that you use that word because that's a huge it's a huge core thing that I teach is that your body is on your side. Like I think it's easy because I've spent most of my life fighting my body, being like, "Ugh, ugh," and like trying to ignore hunger signals. I'm like, you shut up, and like like trying to go against my body and like it's not doing what I want. But like, your body's on your side. It is doing the best it can with what you're throwing at it and it is on your side. But it is when you come to this place of partnership, it's not against you. It's craving carbs because you ate carbs and now the blood sugar response and it's the yes exactly it is the it now it needs fast energy because now your blood sugar has crashed. So it's just looking for
Hmm.
fast energy. It's not against you. It's not your willpower. You're not a bad person for craving this. This is a physiological response and it's so powerful to take out that shame layer, to take out the like I suck, I'm never I'm a total sugar addict. Like this is my former self speak, like I'll never have the willpower of I'm a slave to the sugar, like these things that I used to think about myself. And it was so much self-judgment. And then that just only perpetuates this place of battle with your body and so I think coming to this place when you understand the physiology it creates a partnership and this is everything that I teach because it's so important to understand the physiological component to remove the shame layer and to see like, oh, it's not just willpower. I'm going against my body. I'm like, oh, if I don't eat all day and I'm mad at myself because I want to eat all the food later, it's not because I don't have willpower. It's because my body is starving for energy.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, I really love that you said that.
The I want to pivot just a little bit to this, and I think this is really relevant to the Alzheimer's diagnosis, because we know that there's a big genetic component to a lot of these neurodegenerative diseases. And so something that I want to encourage people with is that sometimes we can't prevent the thing, like that there's no amount of listening to our bodies and taking care of ourselves and having like the quote unquote like optimal lifestyle in order to like 100% prevent
Mhm.
bad things from happening, or from our body breaking down in certain ways. Like I'm in a perception class, neuroscience of perception, and we're talking about the eye and how over time with age people develop presbyopia, which is it's the lens becomes less flexible, which is
Mhm.
why the older we get, like the harder we're like, wait, what, like we have to take things back, like it's harder to look at things up close. Like there's real physiological things that happen because of time and because of genetics. And so, like, maybe we could talk a little bit about maybe the mindset around lifestyle changes like this, but also that sometimes like we can't prevent something that happens, and we don't need to dig too deep into the weeds into things like genetics and epigenetics, but maybe we can talk just a little bit about like giving our bodies and brains like their best chance.
I think the analogy that speaks to that I look, because I've gotten flack online for being like, my grandfather was the healthiest person I know, and he still had Alzheimer's. And I think the best analogy that speaks to that is that there have been people who have been in car accidents, who have worn their seatbelt and have still died, right?
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that we're not putting on our seatbelt every single time. And absolutely, no one can guarantee. And I was thinking, I was like, what if I build an Alzheimer's prevention empire, and then what if I get it? Like, how embarrassing, like, because,
Your engagement is going to go so down.
how embarrassing, but like, you can't, but that doesn't mean, because the act of prevention really is just the act of holistic wellness.
Hmm.
It does everything that we already discussed here. It gives you the more you get into it, the more you peel back how deep this work is. And so, yes, it is for the hope and doing everything we can to prevent, everything that we know about now, according to research, and doing what we can, but also connecting to everything that it gives you now. And that is not just being able to show up
Hmm.
physically, but it is what you really so eloquently said earlier about, like, everything else, the way it gives you and how much more rich you can show up in your life across the board. Um, and so I also think it's really important to take time to connect to how you feel, and what this means for you on the day to day and presently. And so, yes, also future self, but it's also your tonight self, your tomorrow self.
Hmm.
Um, that's really, it's a gift. It's a gift that you can give yourself.
That's really beautiful. The how how are you managing grief and like all the years of anticipatory grief, and like how has that impacted um
Mm.
a deeper sense of meaning and connection to yourself and to others?
Mm, that's a good question. Um, I don't have a clear answer because I overspent. I think a huge reason why so much I speak to self love and self connection comes into my work is I spent so long overspending, deficit spending, not paying attention to myself, not connecting to myself, just put my head down, survive, put my head down, survive, that's kind of been a thing for me my whole life.
Mm.
And then it got real intense when my mom was sick. And there was a reaction to that. I don't want to go too far into my personal life, but there was a reaction. And um and I'm still, you know, amongst this my own personal turmoil of managing grief, and trying to replenish myself and grow. Like, I'm still figuring that out. I'm still trying to
Mm.
like, hooray. I clearly I feel proud and grateful for everything online to explode. And also, it has been horrible, horrible
Mm.
in that, like, I have to show up, and I love it, and I want to, but also I'm grappling with a lot behind the scenes. And how do I show up like dance monkey dance when it's this thing that I'm very passionate about, but I'm so I don't have a great answer because I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to, um, Like, I guess, I think the hardest part about grief is that you're never done.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you know, you're never done, and so it is learning to, make space to allow feelings and to allow it to come up and to trust that you won't be swallowed up forever if you do, um, and to yeah, that's a that's I don't feel like I can give the best answer there because I'm still figuring it out,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah.
For centuries in philosophy and now in like the sciences and psychology and neuroscience, there's been this question of um, are the body and mind two separate things?
Mm,
And in philosophy, there would be the questions of mind, body, and spirit. Who is the me without the physical body? And the strict materialist would say, well, you're nobody because your consciousness lives within the neuronal systems of the brain, and there's no separation between body and brain. And then there's, on the other side, people who would say like, no, 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 like there's these separate parts of you and parts that exist forever, and like
well,
we don't have to explore that. But really the point of what I'm trying to say is like, for a long time there's been this weird split between body and mind, like that mental health was treated as something separate from bodily
mm,
health. And we're not seeing that as actually true. Like, we're seeing that some of the changes that you're talking about with exercise, movement, nutrition impacts how our mental wellness is. And in this, it's, I guess what the point that I'm trying to get to is that it's a feedback loop for us.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so, like, for me to be able to say, when Annie passed away, things changed. Like, it wasn't just in my body, but it was in like my capacity to deal with like life
mhm,
also, which changes my um ability to like say no to like carb rich food. You know what I mean? It's
mhm,
like I've
mhm,
I
mhm.
I had a reel where I talked about this very thing, just like get so much feedback from people when I said like I gained a bunch of weight like that is one of the components to how grief has shown up in my life and in my body. And so many people have said like, I'm so glad that you shared this because like it's not like the impact on the whole system isn't talked about enough. I think it's only talked about in like, here's the mental impact that grief has on you.
Mhm.
And so I'm thinking through what we're talking about with this, like this self-love and this self-care and the attunement to our feelings and our capacity, that means that we show up sometimes differently,
Mm.
whether that's how we show up online or just how we show up for ourselves, changes over time and depending on what's happening in our lives. And so, like, obviously a lot of this conversation is about the food that we eat and the exercises that we do, but like I hope that people are taking away from this conversation that it's like on a much deeper level, it's really about who we are as people and all the parts of ourselves, not just brain health, but also it's our emotional health and
Mhm.
our psychological health and our physical health. And so thanks for being willing to talk a little bit about grief and like how that's impacted you, not just from how things shifted for you online and your visibility to a larger audience. And like I can't even imagine like how challenging that is to all of a sudden be under so much scrutiny from so many more people. But for people to hear uh, just that those parts of ourself matter just as much as any of the other stuff,
Mm.
like that we don't need to dedicate so much time to like eating a certain way or exercising a certain way, but that our mental well-being is all tied up into that too.
I love that you said that. The feedback loop is because it goes the other way too, and it's the same thing when I fall down and, like, well, then I'm not eating as well, and then I don't wanna move as much, and then that just makes me I mean, it's so it's the opposite feedback loop happens as well, and
Mhm.
And when I'm down, that's unfortunately one of the first things to go. And it's just, but that's also, it's like the thing I need the most is the first thing
Mm,
that's thrown out the door. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. And I think it just, going back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, the space of like, like making it okay, and not just being like, not just berating yourself, or just being like, this is hard, and it's okay if you have a slump season. It's okay.
mm,
Because it's the cyclical nature. It's like we expect that we achieve this point. I got in this shape, and now check, healthy forever. Like it's
mm-mm,
cyclical. It's cyclical, and we hit seasons. And I think I was on a real stride for a long time, and now and then I hit a hard season, and so to allow myself to, like, it's okay if I don't, it's okay. It's okay if I don't show up as much online. It's okay. It's
yeah.
okay. And believe it, and like actually believe it, and not, I think there's something in that, and it's important to give yourself that much compassion,
Mm,
you know.
yeah. And that also, like, I was thinking, um, too, about what if I could have the shift too in my mind of not just that, like, it's all right that I'm not doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, but maybe like this is the thing I'm actually supposed to be doing right now is actually
Mm, mhm.
like snuggling in
Yeah,
and
this is like, this is
like
what you need. This is how, what is feeding you right
yes.
now. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And to really
Mm,
allow, and not just be like, "Oh, it's fine." No, like to allow that, to like, and to feel fed by that. I think it's really
mm,
important.
yeah. What okay, so you do a lot of these trainings, you have your program that you do, a 28-day program
Yes, and I
that you
I
do.
decided to I was doing like an evergreen thing, and then I decided to switch it to only live cohorts because it's better. Connection,
I agree.
human connection. And I think it's really important, yeah, to be connected to real life humans, and not just like the
Mm.
internet, what's happening on the other side of the screen. I don't know. Like wait, there
Yeah.
are real life people, and yeah, so
Mm,
I think that has been so wonderful. And I'm again working behind the scenes to create more, to help reach more people, and I can only do so much, which is really annoying to have, you know, like
I'm just one person. Ugh.
I know, it's obnoxious. I can't do everything that is in my mind, but I am
Mm,
working hard to create more, to bring more of this, to make it. I just think it's really important that this kind of work is accessible as possible to everyone, and so I'm working on trying to figure out how to do that.
mm. It sounds too that you haven't like learned the thing and now you're like, cool, now I don't need to learn anything else. Like it sounds to me like you're still constantly investigating and like bringing new information to the people that follow you online and then also to people who end up being in your cohorts too, which is awesome.
Thanks. I am,
Yeah.
and I feel it's weird that I haven't shown up online in a while, or like not with much consistency, because I have so much I want to say. I'm like, where do I even
Mm,
start? Like, I know,
mm,
because I'm fascinated by this, and I am I am it's crazy to me because I've been looking for my calling my whole life, like, but what am I doing? So what am I
mm.
doing? What am I doing? I have a
What is
degree.
my capital P purpose? Yes, I feel
And
that.
the most, I didn't think this could happen to me. I is that I just I found it in this way, but without looking, like,
Mm,
right? It like this
mhm.
tragic thing happened, and then I'm so, I've never been so passionate about anything else in my life, and it feels, I love who I'm becoming in
Mm,
doing all of this. Mm,
I love that.
yeah.
Is there anything else that you're like, I'm gonna make sure that I get to say this. We like cover a lot of ground in this
Cover a lot of
conversation,
ground.
but is there anything that comes to mind that feels like a good send off to people? Of course, I will link all the things in the episode notes so people won't know where to find you. But yeah, is there anything else that comes to mind that you're like, I hope I get to say this?
Oh God, I'm so pressure.
No pressure.
I feel
If
like
there was one thing you could tell the world,
God.
speak now. Hold your peace.
No, I just really love that we covered the like mental health and the self-love
Mm.
component of all things behavior change. I think that is so easily overlooked, and it's hard to make a reel about that. It's hard to make a funny reel,
Mm.
intention getting real about self-love, and I just,
Mm.
but it's so important. And I really love that you could speak to that so much. So thank you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think like maybe with each squat, I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. Just like little mantras
I
with
like it.
it, but oh man. Well, my goodness, thank you so much for your time today. For everyone listening, like I said, you can find all of Rachel's contact information, social media, links to her program in the episode notes. But for all my listeners, before we go, P.S.